So in this video, we will be working programming exercise 6.20, count the letters in a string. We want to write a method that counts the number of letters in a string, and then we also want to write a test program that's going to prompt the user to enter a string and display the number of letters in that string. All right, so let's get to work. After our main program is where we're going to be writing our method. And so we're going to start with public, static, and because we are returning the number, the count of letters in a string, we are going to need to return an integer variable, or an integer value rather. And we're going to call this method count letters. We're going to pass to this method a string we're going to call S. And so now if we're going to count, if we're going to count the letters in this string, we're going to have some kind of a counter. So I'll call it count and initialize it to 0. And then basically what I need to do is I need to look at each and every character in this string and determine, is this character a letter? Is it an alphabetic letter versus some other character, let's say a numeric character or some non-alphabetic character, a colon, a space, all of those things. We don't want to count those. So I need to look at each character in that string. And so in order to process a string, to look through each and every character in a string, I need to loop, and I'm going to use my for loop. And I'm going to start with my integer variable. I'll call it I. I'm going to start in position 0 because the index of the first character in a string is 0. So I'm going to start with initialize my I to 0. And I'm going to continue looping, processing, considering each character in this string as long as I is less than s.length. And the reason I do this is because I don't want to consider s.length, so I have that sharp inequality. I want the last character in the string named s is the index of the last character in that string named s is s.length minus 1. So if I wanted to include this as a less than or equals to, then I would have to say s.length minus 1. So either of those is correct. I can loop as long as I is less than or equal to s.length minus 1, but usually you'll see the way that we represent this is just I less than s.length. And then because I want to consider each and every character in that string, I'm going to increment I by 1. And so what I want to do is I just want to find out, is the character at index value I a letter? Is it an alphabetic character, a letter? And it just so happens that we have a method in the character class called isLetter. So I want to know if the character at index I is a letter, and if it is, then I want to increase my counter. So how do I refer to the character at index I? Well, I say the name of the string that it's in, which is s dot, and then char at, and then I give it the name of the number of the index, which happens to be I in this case. So if the character dot is letter at s dot char at I, then I'm going to increase rather my counter value. And then once I've processed the entire string, which is what that for loop is doing, it's looking at each and every character in the string, and I simply return count. Count is the number of characters in the string. Okay, so once again, I have my counter to count the number of letters. I think I said variables. The number of letters in the string S. And to do that, I need to process each character. I use my for loop starting at index 0 all the way up to index s.length, incrementing by 1. And I use this if statement, and I say if s.char at I, the character at index I, is a letter. So I use char character dot is letter. So if that is true, then I have an alphabetic character and I increment my count. And I do that for each and every character in the string. And then when I'm finished considering all of my characters, I simply return count. Okay, so how do we need to consider writing this test program that allows the user to enter a string. And of course, if the user is going to enter anything, we need to use our scanner. I'm going to import the scanner class. I'm going to set up my scanner object or instantiate my scanner object. I'm going to prompt my user. Okay, so now I need to read in that string. I want to use the next line function to read in the string because I want to allow spaces in that string. So I need to use next line. And then I simply am going to tell the user how many letters are in that string. And I can do that within my print line statement. And the way that I determine how many letters are in the string is I call the method that I just created, count letters, and I pass it the parameter myString. All right, so let's go ahead and run this and see what happens. So the string that we're going to enter is I love computer science. So that should be 1 plus 4 is 5. So that should be 20 characters in that string. And indeed it is.